The morning sun reflected off the metal rooftops of the human colony on Kepler 7-4b, casting long golden beams over the dusty streets. The colony, small but bustling, had grown quietly over the last 20 years. Factories hummed in the industrial sector, markets buzzed with merchants, and children ran freely between the buildings. Life was ordinary, peaceful, and safe until the sky changed. Jax Tanner wiped the sweat from his brow, smearing a streak of grease across his cheek. His hands were black with oil, and his clothes smelled of machinery and metal polish. In the garage, the air was thick with the temps of fuel and the sharp scent of molten wires. Jax crouched under the hull of a hovering transport ship, wrench in hand, turning a stubborn bolt that refused to budge. "Come on, you piece of junk," he muttered under his breath, tapping the bolt with the wrench. "Don't give me trouble today." The transport was old, a relic from the first human colonists. Most people would have scrapped it long ago, but Jax had a reputation for making the impossible work. Machines, no matter how broken or outdated, seemed to obey his hands. Some said he had a sixth sense for metal and circuits, and he had never failed to fix what others gave up on. A sudden rumble above made him look up. At first, he thought it was another transport taking off, but this was different. The air vibrated, and a shadow stretched across the entire colony. Jax squinted, shielding his eyes. Far above, the sky darkened as a massive fleet appeared. Ships the size of mountains hovered in formation, their metallic surfaces glinting coldly in the sunlight. Their engines emitted a low, menacing hum that made the ground tremble. Jax stood slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. He had seen stories of the Vracian Empirelans whose warriors were feared across galaxies. Ships like these were not sent to negotiate. They were sent to conquer. Great Jax muttered, frowning. Just when I thought it was going to be a quiet day. From the largest ship, a hologram projected into the sky above the colony square. The Varaxian High Commander appeared, a towering figure with iridescent armor that seemed alive, and eyes that glowed like molten metal. His voice boomed across the colony, cold and commanding. "Humans of Kepler 7-4b," the commander said. "You will surrender your colony. Resistance is useless. Submit or be destroyed." Colonists froze. Families held their children tightly, and workers dropped their tools. Panic rippled through the streets. Ships landed one by one, and squads of Vraxian warriors disembarked. Each warrior was heavily armored, carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They moved with perfect coordination, their eyes scanning the colony for signs of opposition. Jax walked to the edge of his garage, hands on his hips, watching the scene unfold. While everyone else panicked, he felt something else, an odd mix of anger and determination. "Useless, huh?" he muttered to himself. "Let's see how useless I can be." He didn't run. He didn't hide. Instead, he began gathering what he could: a toolbox filled with wrenches, cutting torches, coils of wire, and a few small homemade gadgets he had been tinkering with for months. He didn't know if they would work, but he trusted his own hands more than any soldier or weapon. The first Vraxian patrol approached the industrial district. They walked past factories and workshops, ignoring the small crowds that had gathered. They seemed confident, almost arrogant, certain that no human could challenge them. Jax followed quietly, slipping between crates and machinery. He studied their movements, noting how they walked, how their weapons worked, and how their armor reflected light. In his mind, he began calculating, plotting. He might be one man, armed with nothing but a wrench and some scraps. But he had something the Vraxians didn't: knowledge of the terrain, and the ability to think creatively under pressure. The Vraxians entered the central power station of the colony. Their heavy boots echoed on the metal floors as they checked the generators. Jax crept closer, staying out of sight. He had prepared a simple trap, a magnetic disruptor he had cobbled together from old engines and scrap magnets. It wasn't much, but it could interfere with their energy weapons if placed correctly. He set the device beneath a walkway and pressed the activation switch. A low hum filled the air. The nearest Varaxian warrior raised his weapon, confusion flashing across his glowing eyes. The energy guns sputtered and died. Another warrior tried to fire, and the same thing happened. Jock smiled behind a crate. "Works every time," he whispered. A sudden alarm blared from the Varaxian ship overhead. The High Commander's voice echoed again. "Identify the source of interference. Hunt the human responsible." The warriors began searching more carefully now, moving methodically through the station. Jock ducked behind machinery, wrench in hand. He knew he couldn't fight them head-on, but he didn't need to. His job was to slow them down, to make them think twice about underestimating humans. Hours passed. Jock moved silently through the colony, leaving small traps, cutting power lines, and even redirecting water flows to create slippery paths. Every action frustrated the Varaxians. They were strong and fast, but Jock's cleverness turned the environment against them. Meanwhile, colonists watched in awe. Some began to help, passing him tools and sharing knowledge about the colony's layout. The morale of the humans lifted. For the first time, they realized they might not be entirely defenseless. By evening, the Varaxians had regrouped. Several warriors were caught in minor traps, and their energy weapons were damaged in ways they didn't understand. The High Commander was furious. He had expected swift victory. But a single human was causing him frustration. Jock returned to his garage as night fell, his clothes dirty and torn, but his spirit unbroken. He sat on a crate, hammering at a piece of scrap metal to make another gadget. "Tomorrow," he muttered. Looking at the stars, "They're going to see why humans aren't so easy to scare." The colony lights flickered as more Varaxian ships loomed overhead. But Jock felt no fear, only resolve. He didn't need a fleet of soldiers or powerful weapons. One angry mechanic with a wrench could change the tide if he used his brain and his hands, and he would. As the night deepened, the colony slept uneasily, knowing the Empire had come, but also knowing that a human had risen to meet the challenge. Jock's Tanner was ready. And the galaxy would soon learn that underestimating humans was the gravest mistake any alien could make. By the time the first stars shone brightly in the sky, Jock had drawn up plans, tinkered with his gadgets, and prepared traps for the next day. Every tool, every scrap, every bit of knowledge about the colony became a weapon in his hands. The Empire sent their greatest warriors. Humans had sent one angry mechanic, and for now, that was enough. The morning light barely touched the colony before the low hum of alien engines filled the air. Jock Tanner had been awake for hours, moving between his garage and the outskirts of the industrial sector. The first day had been enough to show him how dangerous the Varaxians were. Yet, with every challenge, his determination only grew. "Time to make today even more interesting," he muttered, tightening a coil of wire onto a small metal device. Sparks danced as he tested it. It was a simple EMP generator, small enough to carry, but powerful enough to disrupt the Varaxian energy weapons if placed correctly. The streets were quiet. Most colonists had retreated to shelters, hiding from the alien invaders. Only a few braved the streets, glancing nervously at the enormous ships that hovered overhead, their shadows falling across the colony like dark clouds. Jax moved quickly, slipping through alleys and ducking behind crates. He had learned their patrol patterns from the previous day, and now he had a plan. It was not brute force. He didn't have the firepower for that, but strategy, cunning, and speed. The first patrol approached, walking in pairs. Their energy weapons glowed faintly, scanning for movement. Jock crouched atop a pile of scrap metal, wrench in hand, and waited. He tapped the small EMP device, sending a pulse directly toward the nearest warrior. The weapon fizzled and died. The Varaxian glanced around, clearly confused. His companion fired again, and the same thing happened. Sparks flew from their guns, and their glowing eyes narrowed. Jock leaped down from the scrap pile, wrench swinging. He didn't hit them. He didn't need to. A quick tug on a nearby cable sent a container sliding into their path, tripping one warrior while the other staggered back, struggling to reset his weapon. Jock smiled. "Not so easy, are you?" he said under his breath. The Varaxians growled in a strange mechanical tone. They were faster and stronger than any human, but Jock had learned something important. They were predictable. Their logic was clear, their actions precise. All he needed to do was stay one step ahead. He ran toward the power station, weaving through pipes and machinery. A second EMP device was ready, connected to a nearby control panel. With a flick of a switch, the energy pulse surged through the station, shorting out lights and communication systems. The Viraxians froze, their weapons useless for several seconds. Jox used the moment to duck behind a conveyor belt. From there, he watched as the aliens struggled to regain control. He could see their frustration. They had never faced humans like this before. It wasn't strength that defeated them, it was creativity. As he moved through the industrial sector, Jox spotted another problem. One of the larger supply drones had landed, and it was unloading weapons meant for the Viraxian warriors. He had an idea. Using a combination of ropes, magnets, and a makeshift pulley system, he rigged the drone to topple over at just the right moment. When the drone tilted and spilled its cargo, energy rifles clattered across the ground. Two warriors rushed to pick them up, only to find that Jox had rigged a nearby conveyor belt to send the rifles flying into a pit. The warriors looked around, baffled as they realized their weapons were gone. Humans are always so. Inventive, one of the aliens muttered. Though it was a sound of frustration more than admiration, by mid-afternoon, Jox had become a one-man storm. Every patrol he encountered was slowed. Every machine he touched became a trap. He moved like a shadow, appearing where least expected, and disappearing before the Viraxians could react. Colonists began to notice his actions. A few brave workers offered to help him, passing tools and suggesting weak points in the alien technology. Jox nodded, grateful but cautious. He didn't want to put anyone in unnecessary danger. "Stay back," he said to a small group of volunteers. "I can handle this part, but if we work together, we can really confuse them." Using the knowledge of the colony's layout, he led the aliens into areas where maintenance shafts were unstable. A well-timed pull on a cable sent a panel crashing down, forcing a patrol to retreat. Another patrol was lured into a flooded section of the industrial sector, slipping and sliding as Jox silently cheered from above. The Viraxians were becoming increasingly frustrated. Their leader, High Commander Carzel, appeared on the communication screens again. His hologram glowed even brighter this time, anger radiating from his form. "Find the human," the commander demanded. "One individual is causing more trouble than all the defenses combined. Do not underestimate him. Capture or eliminate him immediately." Jox saw the message flicker through the screens in the control room. He grinned. The Empire's greatest warriors were being hunted by one angry mechanic. He picked up his wrench and muttered, "Let's make this a day they'll never forget." By evening, the colony was no longer a place of fear. It was a battlefield of clever traps, improvised defenses, and human ingenuity. Every patrol that entered the industrial sector was slowed or defeated, not by strength, but by quick thinking. Jox had learned to use gravity, water, electricity, and even air pressure to his advantage. A simple pipe could become a trap, a falling crate, a weapon, and a wrench more dangerous than a rifle when used at the right moment. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The Viraxians would adapt, sending more warriors, using different tactics. Jox needed to stay ahead, keep thinking, keep moving. He had no army, no powerful weapon, no reinforcements. Only his mind, his hands, and the determination to protect his home. As night fell, the colony was quieter. The Viraxians regrouped in their ships, repairing what they could and planning their next move. Jox returned to his garage, exhausted but satisfied. He laid out all his gadgets, checking them, repairing them, thinking of new ways to improve. A small group of colonists approached him cautiously. One was a young engineer named Mira who had been observing his tactics. You did all this?" she asked, eyes wide. Jox shrugged, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I did what had to be done. They think they can scare us because we're small, but humans are clever. We survive because we think." Mira nodded. "We want to help. We can build more devices, more traps. Jox held up a hand. "Slow down. I don't want anyone hurt. We'll do this smart. Small, careful. One step at a time." He looked out at the fleet of alien ships hovering silently above the colony. The stars reflected on their metal surfaces, cold and unyielding. But for the first time, he felt that humans might have a chance. Not because they were strong, but because they were unpredictable. Because they refused to surrender, and he would make sure the Viraxians never forgot it. Hours later, as Jox tinkered with a new device, a combination of pulley, magnet, and EMP emitter, he felt a spark of excitement. This was more than survival. It was a challenge. And humans were never afraid of a challenge. The night was quiet, almost peaceful. The stars twinkled above as if watching silently. Jox leaned back, holding his wrench. Tomorrow, the Viraxians would come again, stronger and smarter. But so would he. And this time, he had new tricks, new traps, and a growing knowledge of the enemy. The first contact had been made, and humans had shown that even one person could change the course of a battle. The Empire had come with warriors designed to conquer worlds. But humanity had sent one mechanic with a wrench hand. He was ready to fight back. Jox looked at the stars again. Muttering softly, "They'll learn. Never underestimate humans." And with that thought, he returned to work, preparing for the next day, knowing the real test was just beginning. The next morning, the colony woke to an uneasy quiet. The massive Viraxian ships hovered in the sky, their shadows stretching across streets and factories. But something had changed. The warriors were no longer moving confidently. Their patrols were cautious, eyes scanning for traps that seemed to appear from nowhere. Jox Tanner had made them respect one human's cleverness. Jax emerged from his garage at dawn, wrench in hand, surveying the streets with calm determination. He was tired, his arms sore, and his clothes covered in grease and grime. But fatigue did not weaken his resolve. Today, he planned to take the fight beyond simple traps and clever distractions. Today, he would strike where it hurt the Viraxians most, their technology. He began by inspecting the colony's old satellite array, a half-forgotten network of communications equipment. Years ago, it had been decommissioned, but Jox saw its potential. He spent the morning rewiring the transmitters, connecting them to a small EMP device of his own design. The array was old and fragile, but in the hands of a human with ingenuity, could disrupt alien signals across the immediate area. By mid-morning, he was ready. He activated the array remotely from a hidden vantage point, and a wave of electromagnetic pulses surged across the colony. Viraxian drones in the sky twitched, their circuits sparking, and energy weapons temporarily shut down. Alien patrols stumbled, unprepared for the invisible attack. "Looks like the Empire isn't so perfect after all," Jox muttered with a grin. But the Empire was quick to respond. The High Commander's hologram appeared above the colony square, his glowing eyes piercing even through the EMP interference. "Locate the human immediately," the commander demanded. "He is no ordinary opponent. Find him before he destroys more of our forces." Jox watched from his hiding spot, taking note of the altered patrols. The Viraxians were adapting, but not fast enough. He knew he had to strike again before they fully recovered. He moved through the colony's industrial sector, setting small but precise sabotage points. A steam valve here, a conveyor belt there. A control circuit rerouted to overload another machine. Each adjustment slowed the alien forces without putting humans in harm's way. His actions were calculated, deliberate. Every step he took was designed to show the Viraxians that humans were not so easily defeated by noon. The Viraxians had started sending smaller groups to hunt him down. They were careful now, moving more slowly, scanning every alley and building. Jox led them on a chase through narrow maintenance corridors, ducking under beams and leaping over pipes. At a precise moment, he triggered a sequence of traps. A stack of crates toppled, blocking one path. While a sudden burst of pressurized air sent tools flying into their path, the warriors struggled, their strength and speed hindered by the environment. Jox's grin widened as he dashed away, wrench swinging, disappearing into the shadows. It wasn't just about survival anymore. Jox realized he could go on the offensive, targeting the Viraxian supply lines. A large transport ship was stationed at the edge of the colony, unloading new weapons and armor. Jox studied its design carefully. Using a combination of magnetic pulleys and improvised levers, He rigged the ship so that it would tilt slightly when a pressure plate was triggered. That afternoon, as a squad of warriors approached to collect the supplies, Jox activated his mechanism. The ship creaked and groaned before tilting, spilling crates of energy rifles and armor across the ground. Warriors scrambled to recover their gear, only to find that many crates were lodged in awkward positions or had fallen into ditches. They were still strong, still dangerous. But every delay was a victory for the human mechanic. Word of his actions began to spread quietly through the colony. At first it was whispered from one worker to another, then 2 families hiding in shelters. Humans were starting to believe they could resist the Empire, even if it was just one man who led the way. Jox, however, remained focused on the task. He knew pride could be dangerous. Overconfidence had destroyed many humans before. He kept moving, testing new gadgets, modifying old ones, and always staying one step ahead of the VRX ions. By evening, Jox had prepared his boldest move yet. A Viraxian patrol was moving toward the colony's energy reactor, a central hub that powered much of the industrial sector. If the Empire gained control of it, they could override many of his traps and quickly gain dominance. Jox couldn't allow that. He rigged the reactor room with an intricate system of pulleys, magnets and cables connected to old scrap parts. Every detail was planned. One wrong move, and the system could fail, but if executed correctly, it would temporarily disable the reactor and trap the Viraxians inside. As night fell, the patrol entered the room. Jox, hidden in the shadows, activated the sequence. Doors slammed shut, cables dropped from above, and a pulse of electricity surged harmlessly across the floor, but enough to interfere with the warriors' sensors. The Viraxians struggled to regain control, their weapons flickering, their energy shields temporarily disrupted. Humans are unpredictable, one of them muttered, stepping back. Jox stepped out from behind a control panel, wrench in hand. He didn't attack. They weren't worth his time up close. His plan had worked. The Viraxians were contained, disoriented, forced to retreat. He watched as they slowly backed out of the reactor room, their movements cautious, calculated. They were learning, adapting, but Jox had proven something critical. The humans of Kepler 74b would not yield. As he left the reactor room, Jox ran into Mira and a small group of colonists who had volunteered to help. They carried additional gadgets, improvised traps, and even small explosives meant only to disable machinery. Never to harm anyone? You did it, Mira said, eyes wide with admiration. They didn't expect any of that. Jox nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. They still won't, but it's not just me. The colony is helping, even in small ways. That's what makes the difference. One person can slow them down, but a community can make them think twice. The night was alive with the quiet hum of preparation. Jox and the colonists moved carefully through the streets, setting up additional traps for the morning. They used pipes, wires, water lines, and even old vehicles to create a network of surprises. Every corner of the industrial sector became a potential obstacle for the alien patrols. High above, the Viraxian fleet was visible, their ships glowing with energy as they prepared for the next day's sweep. The High Commander's hologram appeared again, this time flickering slightly from the interference Jox had created. "Locate him?" the commander barked. "He is no ordinary human. He will not escape. Prepare a full-scale search." Jox smiled faintly, knowing that the Empire's best warriors were mobilizing against him. That only made the challenge more satisfying. He had no illusions about the danger. They were stronger, faster, and far more experienced in combat, but he had advantages they could not anticipate: creativity, knowledge of the terrain, and the refusal to surrender. As midnight approached, the colony rested, or at least tried to. The Viraxians patrolled cautiously, and the humans remained vigilant. Jox returned to his garage, exhausted but energized. He reviewed every trap, every device, and every adjustment he had made. Each one was a small victory, a message to the Empire that humans were clever, resourceful, and not to be underestimated. He looked at the stars, shining coldly above the colony. They seemed endless, vast, and different. And yet humans had carved a small place among them, stubborn and defiant. "Tomorrow," Jox whispered to himself. we take the fight further. They think they've seen everything. But they haven't seen the best of us yet. And with that thought, he returned to his workbench, already tinkering on new gadgets, new traps, and new ways to challenge the Empire. The Vraxians had learned one important lesson. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous in ways no weapon could measure, and willing to fight for their home with every ounce of skill and determination they had. One angry mechanic with a wrench could do a lot, and Jacques Tanner intended to prove just how much. The sun rose slowly over Kepler 7-4b, casting a pale light on the colony. The Vraxian fleet hovered ominously above, silent but threatening. The warriors had regrouped, repairing their damaged weapons and recalibrating their machines. The High Commander's hologram loomed over the colony square, eyes blazing with determination. Humans are resilient, he said. But resilience cannot stop the inevitable. Hunt him. Find the human mechanic and end this. Jacques Tanner crouched in the shadows of the industrial district, wrench in hand, surveying the streets. The previous days had taught him much about the Vracians' movements and weaknesses. He knew their tactics, their patterns, and, most importantly, their arrogance. They underestimated humans. That was their greatest mistake. He was not alone. The colonists, inspired by his courage, had begun helping more actively. Engineers, workers, and even young trainees volunteered, offering knowledge, gadgets, and manpower. They had formed a loose network of resistance, guided by Jacques' clever strategies, ready for the next round. Mira asked, holding a small device she had helped design. Jacques nodded, a faint smile on his face. We've slowed them down before. Now we make them think twice. Let's set the stage. The plan was bold. Jacques decided to use the colony itself as a weapon. Every alley, every building, every old pipe could become part of the defense. The industrial district became a maze of traps, EMP pulses, tripwires, and magnetic disruptors. They even used old vehicles as mobile barricades. Every patrol that entered would be slowed, confused, or forced to retreat by mid-morning. The first wave of elite Vraxian warriors moved into the district. They were faster, stronger, and better trained than any previous patrol. Their energy weapons glowed brightly, scanning for traps. But they were predictable, following routines that Jacques had studied carefully. From the shadows, Jacques watched and waited. When the first warrior stepped onto a cleverly placed pressure plate, a container of tools fell, blocking the path. Another warrior tried to adjust his weapon, only to find it jammed by an EMP pulse triggered by Jacques' hidden device. Not so easy, huh? Jacques muttered under his breath. The elite warriors grew frustrated. They tried to coordinate, moving together, but Jacques had anticipated this. Hidden magnetic lines and pulley traps redirected them into dead ends. Every attempt to regroup was met with another ingenious obstacle. Colonists watched from safe vantage points, holding their breath as Jacques led the warriors on a chase. He didn't need to fight them directly. His goal was to outthink them. Every trap, every distraction, every clever device bought time and made the Vraxians doubt themselves. One by one, the warriors were forced to retreat, slipping through the maze of obstacles. Jacques knew this was only the beginning. He had planned a final challenge for the High Commander himself, the Energy Control Center. The heart of the colony's industrial sector was Jacques' target. If the Vraxians took it, many of his traps would fail. But if he could defend it cleverly, could turn the tide of the entire conflict. Jacques spent hours reinforcing the control center. He connected old power conduits to pressure plates, rerouted energy lines to trigger magnetic locks, and even connected a simple pulley system to release barrels of water at the right moment. Every detail was planned meticulously by late afternoon. The High Commander sent a squad of his best warriors to seize the control center. They moved quickly, using their advanced sensors to avoid traps. Jacques stayed hidden, waiting for the perfect moment. As the first warrior stepped onto a seemingly ordinary floor panel, a hidden magnetic lock activated, sending the warrior sliding toward a pile of crates. Another warrior triggered a small burst of pressurized air, knocking him backward. Sparks flew as devices activated, confusing the Vraxians and making it impossible to coordinate. Jack seized the opportunity. Using his wrench, he quickly tightened a cable connected to a pulley system. 2 barrels of water crashed into the floor, creating a slippery surface that forced the Vraxians to stumble. A hidden EMP device fired, disabling their energy weapons temporarily. The warriors struggled to regain control, but every move they made played into Jox's plan. Then the High Commander arrived. His massive form appeared in the doorway, glowing eyes scanning the chaos. He was confident, assuming he could defeat one human easily, but he had not accounted for Jox's ingenuity. "You are clever, human," the commander said, his voice echoing with authority. "But cleverness will not save you." Jox grinned, adjusting another pulley trap. "Maybe, but it will slow you down." The commander advanced, his steps shaking the floor. Jox dodged quickly, using the environment to his advantage. He led the commander into a narrow corridor where previously hidden traps awaited. A set of magnetic cables lifted crates above, and with a precise twist of his wrench, Jox released them. Blocking the commander's path temporarily, the warriors accompanying the commander tried to follow, but the corridor was a maze of obstacles. Jox had turned it into a labyrinth of human ingenuity. Every weapon jammed, every step slowed, every movement predicted. Colonists watched from above, holding their breath as Jox led the Empire's greatest warriors into a trap of their own making. His bravery inspired them, showing that even against the strongest enemies, humans could prevail with cleverness and courage. Finally, Jox reached the reactor's central control panel. With a few quick adjustments, he triggered a sequence that locked the doors, rerouted energy to disable the commander's suit temporarily, and released a final burst of pressurized air that knocked the warriors off balance. The High Commander struggled to regain control, but Jox moved quickly, using a simple mechanical lever to lock the final door. The corridor was now a cage, holding the Vraxian leader and his elite squad in place. "Impressive," the commander admitted, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Perhaps I underestimated humans." Jox shrugged, wiping sweat from his brow. "You're not the first to do that. Won't be the last." The Vraxians, for the first time, felt frustration, uncertainty, and even a hint of respect. They realized that defeating humans would not be a simple task. These were creatures that could think, adapt, and turn every weakness into a weapon. One mechanic with a wrench had outsmarted the Empire's best warriors and, for the first time, they doubted their own superiority. As night fell, Jox emerged from the control center, exhausted but victorious. The colonists cheered softly from safe positions. Inspired by the human spirit that had triumphed without brute force, Mira approached, holding a small lamp. You did it. You actually stopped them." Jox shook his head. "We did it. Not just me. Every person in this colony who helped, who shared ideas, who worked quietly, this was our victory. The Empire may have warriors, but humans. Humans have something they don't understand: creativity, courage, and the refusal to give up." The colony settled in for the night, alert but hopeful. The Vraxians retreated to their ships, repairing what they could but now wary of every corner, every alley, every human in sight. The High Commander would not forget this day. Neither would the warriors and Jox Tanner. He returned to his garage, tired, sore, and covered in grease, but with a spark of satisfaction in his eyes. He began tinkering on new gadgets, already planning the next phase. The Empire had sent their greatest warriors. Humans had sent one angry mechanic with a wrench, and that wrench, guided by intelligence, courage, and determination, had turned the tide. Jox looked out at the night sky, stars twinkling like distant fires. Somewhere in the galaxy, other humans might be facing similar threats. He hoped they would remember one thing: no matter how strong the enemy, humans could always adapt, survive, and triumph. And tomorrow, the fight would continue. But tonight, the humans of Kepler 7 4b could sleep a little easier, proud of what they had achieved with nothing but their minds, their hands, and an unbreakable spirit. The universe had been warned. Never underestimate humans. The morning sun rose slowly over Kepler 7 4b, casting warm light across the industrial district. The colony, though battered from days of alien incursions, was alive with quiet determination. Humans moved purposefully, repairing damaged machinery, reinforcing barricades, and preparing for what they knew might be the final confrontation. Jock Tanner stepped out of his garage, wrench in hand, surveying the streets. His clothes were torn, his hands black with grease, and his face streaked with sweat, but his eyes burned with focus. The Vracians had regrouped overnight, bringing reinforcements and new warriors designed to break through any trap. But Jox was ready. The colony had learned from the past days. They had seen what humans could do when one person refused to surrender. Today, Jox muttered under his breath, "We finished this." Mira joined him, carrying a toolkit filled with devices they had prepared together. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, worry in her eyes. Jock shook his head. "It's not about being sure. It's about doing what we must. They've come for our home, our people. If we don't act, they win. We fight smart, we fight together, and we show them humans cannot be conquered." The first wave of Vraxian warriors appeared at the edge of the colony, their massive figures glinting in the sunlight. They moved with precision, weapons glowing, scanning for traps. But this time, the humans were ready. The entire district had become a network of obstacles, each designed to confuse, slow, and mislead the invaders. Jox led the charge, moving through alleyways, across rooftops, and around barricades. His devices triggered pulses of electricity, magnetic locks, and bursts of pressurized air that threw warriors off balance. Each trap was timed perfectly, each path carefully planned. The Varaxians struggled, their confidence waning as their elite forces were slowed and disoriented by one human's ingenuity. Colonists watched from safe positions, inspired by the spectacle. It was no longer just about survival. It was about proving something greater, that humans, though seemingly ordinary, could stand against the mightiest warriors in the galaxy by mid-morning. Jox had led the Varaxians toward the central plaza, a location carefully chosen for its strategic advantages. Old factories, pipes, and machinery were repurposed as obstacles. Magnetic cranes swung unexpectedly, water pipes, flooded pathways, and improvised EMP devices disabled energy weapons. The warriors were forced to retreat and regroup repeatedly. Unable to predict the next move, the High Commander appeared, towering and imposing. His eyes glowed like molten metal, and his voice echoed across the plaza. "Human," boomed, "you've caused much trouble, but this ends today. Surrender, or be destroyed." Jock stood tall, wrench in hand, unwavering. "Surrender. Not a chance. This is our home. You'll leave it only when we say so." The commander's expression tightened, and he advanced, accompanied by his elite squad. Jox moved swiftly, weaving between machinery and improvised barricades. Every step was planned, every movement calculated. The commander reached the central plaza, expecting a straightforward battle. But the humans had turned the area into a maze of unpredictability. Crates fell from above. Magnetic traps activated, and bursts of air and water forced the warriors to stumble. Jox used his wrench to release hidden levers, triggering new obstacles with perfect timing. The elite warriors found themselves trapped in a web of human ingenuity. Unable to advance or retreat effectively, the commander growled, realizing that brute strength alone could not win this fight. Humans were clever, adaptable, and relentless. Every obstacle was designed to frustrate, every movement anticipated. And the most dangerous human of all was right in front of him, Jox Tanner, a mechanic who refused to yield. Jox knew this was the final moment. He activated the last sequence of his traps, a combination of EMP pulses, magnetic locks, and carefully placed mechanical barriers. The warriors' weapons jammed, their armor temporarily disabled. The commander himself was caught in a collapsing series of crates and magnetic lines. For the first time, High Commander struggled. His elite warriors tried to free him, but each attempt triggered another trap. The humans had turned their home into a fortress of cleverness. It was not strength or size that won the battle it was planning, knowledge and courage. Colonists watched from above, cheering quietly. This was the culmination of days of preparation, ingenuity, and unity. One human had become a symbol of resistance, inspiring an entire community to stand firm against impossible odds. Jocks moved carefully through the plaza, ensuring no warrior could escape easily. He didn't attack; they were already defeated by their own arrogance and the clever devices around them. The High Commander struggled to rise, finally glaring at Jocks with a mix of frustration and reluctant respect. "You are remarkable," the commander admitted, his voice low. "Humans are not to be underestimated." Jocks wiped sweat from his brow, holding his wrench steady. "I hope you remember that. We're not just clever for one day. Humans survive, adapt, and fight for what matters. And we won't be easy to beat again." The remaining Vraxians, realizing their leader was incapacitated and their weapons compromised, began to retreat. One by one, their ships lifted off, engines glowing as they disappeared into the sky. The Empire had been forced to withdraw, humbled by a single human's cleverness and the resilience of the colony. As the last ship vanished over the horizon, the colony erupted in quiet celebration. Humans emerged from hiding, cheering for their hero and the ingenuity that had saved them. Jocks Tanner, covered in grease and dust, finally allowed himself a small smile. He had done what many thought impossible. Mira approached, handing him a clean rag. You did it, Jocks? You stopped the Empire." Jocks shook his head. "Not me. We did it. Every person who helped, who shared ideas, who stood firm, this is our victory. The Empire came with warriors designed to conquer worlds. We came with minds, courage, and unity. That's what won." Colonists began repairing their homes and machinery, working together with renewed energy and pride. The industrial district, though scarred from the battles, stood as a testament to human resilience. The traps, gadgets, and clever inventions that had defended them became symbols of their strength. As night fell, Jocks returned to his garage. He cleaned his wrench and looked at the tools scattered around him. Even now, he was already thinking of improvements. New devices and better ways to prepare for whatever challenges the galaxy might send next, somewhere far away. Other human colonies might be facing threats of their own, and Jocks hoped they would remember this day. One human, armed with skill, determination, and a simple wrench, could make a difference. Humans could adapt, survive, and triumph against overwhelming odds. The stars above Kepler-74b shone bright, indifferent, yet beautiful. Humanity had carved a small victory in the galaxy, showing that even against the greatest warriors, courage, cleverness, and determination could prevail. The Empire had been humbled. The humans had defended their home. And one mechanic, angry, clever, and determined, had become a symbol of hope, resilience, and the unbreakable human spirit. Jack sat in his garage, tinkering on a new device, a small smile on his face. The fight might not be over everywhere, and the galaxy might still hold dangers beyond imagination. But for now, Kepler-74b was safe, and humans had shown what they were capable of. The Empire sent their greatest warriors. Humans had sent one angry mechanic with a wrench, and that wrench had changed the course of the battle, proving once and for all that underestimating humans was the gravest mistake any being could make. Jocks leaned back, holding his wrench, and whispered to himself, "Never underestimate humans. Never." And with that, the stars outside continued to shine, watching silently as the human spirit had proven victorious, clever, and unstoppable.